A rapper being shot isn't unheard of, but there are some strange things about this situation. Follow me down the rabbit hole about Tupac Shakur. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we're talking about Tupac Shakur. Thank you, Danielle, for this request. This is one in our series of fake deaths. So we covered Elvis last week. We're doing Tupac this week. You never know who's going to be next week. So let's get into it. Tupac was born June 16th, 1971 in East Harlem, New York City. His given name right at birth was Lassane Parish Crooks, but he was renamed when he was a year old. So he's been Tupac Shakur for almost all of his life. He was born to Afeni Shakur and named after her husband at the time, but their marriage fell apart after he found out that Tupac wasn't actually his child. Both of his parents, like his actual father and his mother, and all the men that she would end up being with, they were Black Panthers in like the late 60s, early 70s. In fact, about a month before Tupac was born, his mother was tried in New York City as part of the Panthers' 21 criminal trial, and she was acquitted of all 150 charges. In the 80s, Afeni struggled with drug addiction, which caused them to move several times. And sometimes they would even end up moving into homeless shelters, just kind of all over the place. In 1984, they moved from New York City to Baltimore. And Tupac attended 8th and ninth grade in regular schools. And then he found the Baltimore School for the Arts. There, he studied poetry, jazz, and ballet, and he even performed some Shakespeare's plays and in The Nutcracker, which I thought was cool. While he was at the School for the Arts, he met Jada Pinkett, who was the subject of some of his poems. And actually, later on, I didn't include this, but later on, I guess he would introduce her to the movie scene and kind of get her movie career started. And she claims that he proposed to her while he was in prison later. I don't know if that's 100% true. That's what she claims. But while at the Baltimore School of the Arts, he was voted or had won this reputation of the school's best rapper. But he liked all kinds of music. He wasn't just into rap. He kind of liked everything. While in Baltimore, he connected with others in the Young Communist League USA, and he dated the daughter of the director of the chapter. She was white, but was raised to kind of look past color. It doesn't really matter. I think he was drawn to the communist group because his mom and his stepdads were part of the Black Panthers, and he was used to being around groups like that. So when he found this Young Communist League, it just kind of made sense to him. I don't know for sure, but in 1988, Shakur moved to Marin City, California, which is near the Bay Area. He did go back to school, but he didn't graduate. He later got his GED. In 1989, he began recording under the stage name MC New York. And he also began attending the poetry classes of Leela Steinberg, who would become his manager. Steinberg got Tupac signed with Atron Gregory, who was the manager of the rap group Digital Underground. And in 1990, he became a backup dancer and roadie for the group. And every now and then they would let him kind of take over the stage and just rap, but that wasn't too common. In 1991, Shakur debuted on Digital Underground's single Same Song, and he appeared in the music video for that song as well. And he was going by the name Tupac, but the number 2 Pac, even though his name is spelled Tupac. Just to clarify, Tupac's manager asked the co-founder of Digital Underground, Jimmy Drite, to work with him, and Drite remembers that Tupac didn't really work well as a group. And he said, quote, "This guy was on a mission from day one. Maybe he knew he wasn't going to be around 7 years later," end quote. Digital Underground and Drite produced Tupac's earlier work with his group Strictly Dope. While working with Digital Underground, he met the rapper Stretch, and working with Stretch, Majesty, who is Stretch's brother, and DJ Kalo, they formed another group called Live Squad. This group was formed in Queens, New York, whereas Strictly Dope was in California. Stretch and Tupac became friends easily, and they actually recorded a lot together. They performed together. They were like always helping each other out and doing things together all the time. In November of 1991, Tupac's debut album, Tupacalypse Now, came out, and rappers such as Nas, Eminem, Game, and Talib Kweli were inspirations for his album. They weren't on the album, they just kind of like inspired him to do what he did. His hit song, Brenda Had a Baby, was on this album, and it was pretty controversial. The U.S. Vice President, Dan Quayle, commented on the album when it came out saying, quote, "There's no reason for an album like this to be released. It has no place in our society." Tupac explained his album by saying, quote, "I just wanted to rap about things that affected young black males. When I said that, I didn't know that I was gonna tie myself down to just take all the blunts and hits for all the young black males, to be the media's kicking post for young black males." And even with all that, the album went certified gold. 500,000 copies were sold. So he was kind of stirring the pot. They didn't really like it. But also, he grew up with his mom being an activist. And so he felt kind of like it was his responsibility to look out for people in society. In 1992, he was a leading role in the movie Juice. This movie had a couple of his singles in it as well, I Get Around and Keep Your Head Up. In February of 1993, Tupac's second album came out, and it was called Strictly for My Niggaz. I'm spelling it out because that's how it's on the album. It's N.I.G.G.A.Z. This album debuted at number 24 on the pop albums chart. It was a success. Ice Cube was featured on the song Last Words. I Get Around was on the album and was Tupac's breakthrough song. And this song actually reached number 11 on the pop singles chart. And this album had the song Keep Your Head Up, which was the anthem for women's empowerment, which I know I said was also in the movie Juice. So he just put it on an album as well. The album went platinum with 1 million copies sold. Tupac's albums, like I said, were pretty controversial because they're talking about things like socio-political views and the disadvantages that people are facing in their economic bracket. People didn't want to hear about that. People that were like middle class, white, didn't want to hear what a young black man was going through. And Tupac took that on and was like, well, let me tell you. In late 1993, Tupac formed the group Thug Life with Big Sky, Macadocious, Mopreme Shakur, who is Tupac's stepbrother, and Rated R. This group usually performed live without Tupac because he was busy doing all the other things. He was pretty famous by this point. He starred alongside Janet Jackson in the movie Poetic Justice in 1993, and in 1994, he was in Above the Rim. In October 1994, the Thug Life group released its only album, Thug Life Volume 1, and it went certified gold. Because gangsta rap was under such scrutiny, most of the original album was scrapped and replaced with new songs, but Tupac did perform one of the unreleased songs out on bail at the 1994 Source Awards. And at some point in 1994, he dated Madonna. I thought that was kind of a cool, fun fact. In 1995, Tupac released his third album, Me Against the World. This album is now referred to as his magnum opus and is ranked among the most influential rap albums ever. Ever, still to this day. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, and the lead single was Dear Mama, which was released the month before the album dropped. Just 4 months after the album was released, it went platinum. So Many Tears and Temptations were also singles from that album that were incredibly popular, and he won Best Album at the 1996 Soul Train Music Awards for Me Against the World. But Tupac didn't have like the best history with the law. Imagine that, a gangster rapper that wasn't in trouble with the law, right? So he had gone to jail a couple times for assault, like 10 days here, 14 days there, nothing crazy. But in 1995, he was sentenced to 4.5 years for sexual assault. He was the first person to reach #1 on the Billboard charts while incarcerated. So another little fun fact for you. He also heard that his mom was going to lose her house during this time, like while he was in jail. So he called up his friends. He contacted Suge Knight, who was the founder of Death Row Records, and Suge Knight gave Tupac's mom $15,000 right away. Like, was instantly like, "Yep, here, take care of what you need to take care of." Then, and he had visited Tupac in jail several times. So he went back to New York to visit Tupac again in October of 1995, and he posted his $1.4 million bond and got Tupac out of jail. So Tupac went back to LA and joined Death Row Records, which makes sense. I'm sure that was part of the deal. In February of 1996, All Eyes on Me dropped. This was Tupac's 4th album and Rap's first double album, which that covered 2 of the 3 albums that he owed to Knight for bailing him out of jail as part of his contract. But at this point, this was like more of like a gangster rap message instead of a political message that he had been doing prior. It seemed like he was being more aggressive now that he was out of prison, which I can kind of understand because like prison it's not like a walk in the park, you know, you're like fighting for your life every single day in there. So I'm sure he changed a little bit. Now he's part of Death Row Records. So maybe they're requiring certain things of him. I don't know for sure, but this was definitely a more aggressive album. Unfortunately, Tupac's life was cut short when on September 7th, 1996, Tupac was shot in Las Vegas while he was driving with Suge Knight. He died 6 days later when his mom made the decision to stop his life support. He was in a coma for 6 days, like trying to see if he would come back. He wasn't going to, so his mom didn't pull the plug, but she was the one that made the decision to pull the plug. But we're going to backtrack a bit. I know. I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but I wanted to highlight in its own section the feud between the East Coast and the West Coast rap, because this was huge in Tupac's life. If you don't understand the Tupac Biggie like fight that was happening, you can never understand the deaths. So Tupac and Biggie were friends. I want to start there. They were good friends for a long time. When they first met, it was because Biggie went to LA and he like asked this local drug dealer, "Hey man, like I want to find Tupac Shakur." Dude like pointed him right to him. And when Biggie walked in to whatever party Tupac was at, Tupac was actually playing one of Biggie's songs. So they became fast friends. Tupac would sometimes call Biggie up on stage to like rap with him. Biggie would crash on Tupac's couch when he was in LA. But Tupac was bigger than Biggie at the time. And like Biggie wanted that success. He wanted what Tupac had. And actually, Biggie asked Tupac to be his manager because he wanted to be bigger and do what Tupac was doing. But he was like, "No, man, like, I think that I'm not going to be the best manager. Why don't you go to Diddy? Because Diddy's going to make you a star." And so that's what Biggie did. He was like, "Yeah, absolutely." In October of 1994, Tupac got shot in New York. And that kind of changed everything. So he was supposed to be recording with rapper Lil Sean, and Biggie was supposed to be there, a couple other people, Diddy. And when he got to the lobby of the studio, a few guys jumped him, trying to like steal his chains off of his neck. He tried to fight, but he ended up getting shot 5 times, and he survived. But allegedly, Diddy's manager was the one that set Tupac up. Even though Biggie told Tupac to stay away from that guy, he's bad news, Tupac was like, "Nah, it's fine." And that's the guy that set him up. But Tupac thought from the very beginning that it was Diddy and Biggie setting him up. There's a lot of names here. I'm trying to keep it all straight.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's melts.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona. Menopause care made easy.
Basically, this is what sent Tupac over the edge. He was like, nope, fuck you guys, I'm out. When Tupac was in prison, Biggie's song Who Shot Ya came out, and he kind of thought that this was like Biggie mocking him for being shot and like, haha, we got you, fuck you kind of deal. So he was pretty pissed. Then, when he got out of prison, he dropped this diss song called Hit 'Em Up and claimed that he was sleeping with Biggie's wife. It was quite the back and forth. Just a few months after the diss song was released, Tupac was killed. And of course, right away, everyone thought it was Biggie. But according to several people who were close with both rappers, they were kind of like totally over this feud. They wanted to sit down, figure it out, and kind of move forward. They were tired of fighting. They were tired of all this shit that was going on. So at the end of it, I don't know if Biggie was involved. I don't know. But 6 months later, while in LA, Biggie was shot and killed. It is highly understood that Suge Knight was the one that hired somebody to kill Biggie. But Tupac's death was never solved. That's what we're here to figure out. Because he might not have died. I know that sounds strange, right? Like some rapper got shot and we're talking about him not dying. Well, at the end, like right around the time of his death, he didn't really want to work with Suge Knight and Death Row Records anymore. Like he felt obligated because they bailed him out of jail, but he wasn't really, he wanted to kind of start his own thing. Some people believe that maybe Knight was responsible for the hit on Tupac. Now, I'm not sure if Knight would put a hit out and put himself into harm's way like that, but honestly, it makes him look more innocent if he was in the car, so maybe he did do that to kind of like throw people off his trail, or maybe the hit just didn't go as planned and Knight later killed the guy that killed Tupac because he messed up. I don't know. That's a theory. But basically, the theory that we're going to talk about is Tupac faked his death. He was kind of at the height of his career, you know, everything's going great for him, but I think that maybe he wanted to get out of the game and that's why he would have faked his death. He was out of prison on bond, but he wasn't fully free because the charges he hadn't been acquitted of the charges. What was going to happen with all that was still kind of up in the air. And he didn't really want to be with Death Row Records. He wanted to start his own label. And Suge Knight is notoriously homicidal. So you can't just like leave him. He's not like an easy dude to mess around with. You're either in his good graces or not. There's no in between. So basically, the theory goes that Tupac moved to Cuba to get away from all of it, start his life over. He had some money and was still young, so he thought, you know, like, let's go. But why do people think this? Well, there is some evidence suggesting that Tupac just didn't die. 7 albums have come out since the death of Tupac. And yes, he could have recorded some of these songs while he was still alive, but wouldn't they have tried to capitalize on all that while he was alive and popular, or right after his death, never waste a good tragedy, am I right? So don't you think that they would have done that? And they did. They tried to capitalize on it because right after his death, an album did come out called The Dawn Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory. And this album was released under the stage name Machiavelli. And honestly, it was just supposed to be this underground record. It wasn't ever supposed to be released. He just kind of did it for funsies. But they did release it because of his murder. They were trying to, oh, cool, we have these songs here. This is Tupac, right? But more albums kept coming out. So first was Are You Still Down in 1997. And then his Greatest Hits album came out in 1998, which, okay, fine. Greatest Hits, that's all these old songs that he's already played, right? We're just putting them all onto one album. So it's not technically a new album. They're just trying to capitalize on it. Cool, whatever. But then Still I Rise came out in 1999. Until the End of Time came out in 2001. Better Days in 2002. Loyal to the Game in 2004. And Pac's Life in 2006. So you got album after album after album coming out. You think he recorded that many albums that in advance? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you have his autopsy photo, which was fake, by the way. So they released this photo of Tupac laying on a table, and the cuts that a coroner makes to do the autopsy, they were kind of open. They were half sewn shut, half open. But people have noticed that his tattoos aren't on the body that are in the picture. Tupac had a lot of tattoos. So, and several of them pretty well recognizable. They weren't in that picture. The man looked like Tupac, but his tattoos weren't there. Could they have been cut off? I mean, I guess, but it didn't look like they were cut off. He was cut in ways that a coroner would cut a body to do an autopsy. Where that tattoo should have been was not in the way. Also, Tupac had been in a coma for 6 days before he died. But in the autopsy photo, he had clean-shaven face and head. Now, I know this is not a smoking gun because his mom could have been doing that, shaving him while he was in the coma just to kind of keep him up. But it does raise some questions. And no autopsy report has ever been released on Tupac. But for Biggie Smalls, we do have an autopsy report. Not for Tupac, but for Biggie, who was killed 6 months later. Now, we could look at it and be like, well, one was in Las Vegas and one was in Los Angeles. Fine, but it seems a little sketchy to me. And the last, really big smoking gun is the way Tupac's mother announced his death. She said he chose to leave quietly. Which, yes, maybe it was his time. He passed away quietly. Or maybe he chose to get out of the life quietly. Maybe he came back too, and they had a heart-to-heart while he was in the hospital and realized that this lifestyle just was too much for the family, too much for Tupac to continue, that people keep trying to shoot him, kill him. And so she was the last person with him. Maybe she just covered up for him and was like, yep, he's gone, he's passed on, but it gave him a way to escape, to get out of there. Now, there have been other things that come up. There was a man that applied for unemployment in Kentucky under the name Tupac Shakur. And before you go thinking, no way Tupac is in Kentucky, what if that's one of the best places for him to hide? No one would ever think to look for him there, There's other things like that kind of come up. But I think the big smoking guns, you have these albums that keep coming out. You have these weird autopsy photos. You have this hologram. They say it's a hologram. Dr. Dre was at Coachella and had this hologram of Tupac. But what if it was Tupac still alive and not one from when he was dead? It's hard to know. Like, they could have easily gotten the recording of him doing a live performance and putting it into this hologram right now or when he was dead. I feel like that one's really hard to be like, oh, look, he's alive. Maybe. There's just a lot of weird things around his death. And there's a lot of reasons why he wouldn't want to be in that lifestyle anymore. Just some thoughts. What do you guys think? You can always send me a message on Instagram. I reply to every single one of your messages. So when you message me, it's actually me replying. And yeah, I mean, I love to talk to you guys there. So if you want to tell me what your thoughts are on this death, I'd love to hear it. I am taking next week off. I need a break. It's a lot. I've been going and going and going. I just need a break for a week. So thank you guys for having some grace with me and loving me through it. And I will see you all the week after that. Stay skeptical, my friends, and see you later. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Valaha, for our awesome intro.